I was tying a satin ribbon around a box of peppermint bark when Nora's voice slid across the kitchen like a buttered knife. "Oh, Gloria," she said, smiling to the room. "You don't have to fuss. It's 2024. We do online gift cards now." Laughter flickered, polite and quick. Her nails were lacquered a Santa red. Mine were plain. The island glittered with labeled jars and place cards. Nora's Perfect Eve, Deck 24, written in her looping script. 14 names, mine squeezed at the end like an afterthought. At 66, I no longer need to be center stage. I need to be heard. "Some people still keep traditions," I said, easing the ribbon's tail into a sharp V. She tilted her head like I'd barked at a cloud. "It's sweet," she murmured, loud enough for the cousins and the camera phone on its tripod, but a little irrelevant. That word landed where old thorns live. The Harris house smelled of cinnamon candles and performance. James stood behind Nora, one hand on her chair, the ring I gave him when he turned 18, a plain gold band, dull from dishes or from distance. "Mom," he said, gentle but stacked with warning, "let's not make it a thing." "I'm not making anything," I said. "I'm finishing this bow." On December 10th, I'd bought the wooden box at a craft shop off Whitaker Street. Light pine, smooth top. I burned one word into its lid with a cheap pen torch. Faith. It wasn't pretty. It didn't need pretty. It needed purpose. I slid it under the tree this morning, beneath the gold baubles and Nora's camera-ready perfection. Even now, my foot tapped toward it, like a needle finding a compass point. "Gloria, dear," said Aunt Lila, perched on a bar stool and thirstier for gossip than eggnog. "Didn't the bank call you last week? A mix-up?" Heads swiveled. Nora's smile didn't crack. She pressed it brighter. "Clerical error," she said for me, voice smooth. "Happens to the elderly all the time. We've been managing it." "Elderly?" I repeated, tasting steel. Nora leaned toward the counter, gathering photos for her flat lay. Perfectly iced cookies, brass flatware, sprigs of rosemary tied with twine. "It's not an insult, Gloria. It's logistics. I teach lessons, even at the table. But the first class is always patience." I tied the last bow and placed the peppermint bark into the desserts tray she'd assigned me after demoting my pecan pie to optional. I glanced at the dining room door, its old brass lock I'd oiled years ago when hinges squealed during hurricanes. The key still hung on that silly angel hook by the pantry, dusted by flour and neglect. Traditions, I thought. Some of us keep them. Evelyn texted at 3:07 p.m. "Paper ready. You're not irrelevant." I looked up to find Nora snapping a picture of me, then lowering her phone like she'd caught a fish too small to brag about. "Smile," she said. "We want memories." I gave her one. My calm. If stories like this help you breathe, tap like and subscribe. If you've ever been blamed for what you didn't do, type justice. Subscribe to our channel. This helps our work reach more people. What if she knew the truth? By the mantel, James adjusted the carved nativity his grandfather whittled in 1951. He set Joseph upright, smoothing a thumb over the soft wood. "Mom," he said, voice for me alone, "please don't make a scene this year." "This year?" I asked, keeping my eyes on Mary's quiet face. Outside, Spanish moss swayed in the damp savannah light. It was December 20th, 4 days to Eve, 5 to Christmas Day. The house hummed with preparations and rehearsals. Nora ran them like a conductor. James slid his hands into his pockets. "You know how she is about image. You know how everyone follows her page now. We need peace." "You need peace," I said. "I need the truth." "About what?" He blinked, sheltered boy growing into a shelled man. "The bank mix-up? They said they're fixing it." "Did they?" I asked. "What exactly did they say?" He shifted, his wedding band gleamed. Mine, my late husband's, rested in the velvet pouch inside the faith box, touching the folded papers like a palm to a fevered brow. Nora appeared, a garland draped over her forearms. "James, the twinkle lights need testing." To me, she offered a porcelain smile, the kind you can't microwave. "Gloria, the ring dish will be on the sideboard next to the place cards. We thought it might be fun to have everyone put their jewelry there at the start, so photos aren't cluttered with metal glare. My breath paused. The ring dish? The little white one with the gold rim you gave us last year, she said. We're calling it our clean shine ritual. She winked at the cousins, who cooed. It's for the algorithm. The ring stays on my hand, I said. She laughed, kissed the air near my cheek, and left the garland on the sofa like a shed skin. We'll see. After she floated away, James exhaled. She's trying, he said. To clean me, I said, like tarnish. The small loss came that afternoon. I returned from the pantry to find my recipe card box, 30 years of handwriting, moved from counter to garage. A sticky note in Nora's looping script. Minimalism. Less stress. The cards smelled like cold concrete. At 5:42 p.m., Evelyn called. Met with Hannah at the notary's counter, she said. Paper rustled. She stamped the letter. You'll have it by morning. You were right to check your bank app. I stared at the screen, where the December 12th withdrawal still glowed. $12,000, Harris Estate advance, signature on file. Midnight, December 24th, I told myself. That's the deadline. I'd teach one last lesson before dessert. How ink weighs more than sympathy. That night, I slid the wooden box further under the Fraser fur. The carved word, faith, looked almost like family if you were rushing. I pressed my palm against the lid until resin stuck to my skin. In the quiet, the old brass lock on the dining room door seemed to breathe. James stepped into the doorway. Please, Mom, promise me, no scenes. Until midnight, when the box opens. Savannah, Christmas Eve, 1995. I was 37, my hair hot-combed and pinned with pearl barrettes because his mother liked neat. We were in the church fellowship hall off West Duffy Street, tables draped in plastic poinsettias. I'd brought buttered rolls, still warm. Pastor had asked for testimonies. Instead, my mother-in-law, Ruth Harris, lifted her chin and offered a lesson. Some people, she said, looking straight through me, shouldn't handle money. Not their gift. Laughter rustled like wrapping paper. She meant the Christmas Club envelope the wives ran, $100 a month, to be gifted to a family in need. The envelope had come up short that year. I was the newest wife. I was also the only one who'd kept the ledger tidy. Must have been a clerical error, Ruth said, tasting each syllable like sugar. Later, I found the missing bills flattened beneath a wreath storage bin, reeking of dust and tin. Not stolen, miscounted. But the rumor, my rumor, walked faster than facts. Don't make a scene, my husband had whispered, cheeks burning. It'll embarrass Mother. So I didn't. I learned something instead. Humiliation teaches you to measure, to date, to sign. Back in 2024, I wiped flour from the same pair of hands and took out my old gradebook. The cover was cracked, but the pages held their lines. I kept it even in retirement, a habit and an anchor. 10th graders had taught me to read pen pressure, the way a nervous lie loops a letter too wide, the way guilt digs the tail of a Y. On December 12, 9:18 a.m., my bank app recorded a withdrawal. $12,000, Harris Estate advance, signature on file. I pressed the screen until the glass fogged. The G in Gloria curved wrong, a shallow smile. My G always dips deep, like a ladle. Ruth taught me that day in 95 that women protect their sons by kneecapping their daughters-in-law. I buried my rage in casseroles and report cards for 28 years. Nora, modern, curated, camera-sure, felt like Ruth downloaded into a smartphone. Elderly, she'd said yesterday, voice cooled like pewter. Logistics. I pulled out the cigar box where I kept old Christmas relics. The 1995 Fellowship Hall raffle ticket, blue number 118, a Polaroid of Ruth in her velvet hat, and a receipt from Macon Savings where she'd once signed my husband's name to save time. The clerk had circled it in pencil. Back then, everyone did favors in church towns. My fingers stopped on the curve of the J in James, Ruth's hand pretending to be his. It was the same wrong curl that sat in my bank's PDF now. I felt the past click into place like a deadbolt. I was too young then, too married, too eager to belong. Now I was 66 and untethered. I had time, I had eyes, and I had a box carved with faith waiting under a good Georgia fir. When I closed the cigar box, the nativity on the mantel creaked, the old house settling or a warning. In my bones, Ruth's voice, "Don't make a scene." In my mouth, my own, "I don't. I document." Until midnight, when the box opens. But why did the old Macon receipt show Nora's looping N beside my son's name? December 21st. Rain slanting across Forsyth Park. Sky the color of old pewter. I drove to Whitaker Street and bought a pine box with a lid that fit like a truth. At home, I set it on the kitchen table and carved faith into its top with a pen torch that hissed like a tiny snake. The letters were uneven. My hands can still grade, but they tremble when the past pulls taut. I sanded the burn marks smooth. The box didn't need pretty. It needed to hold. Evelyn came at 10:12 a.m., umbrella dripping, eyes bright behind cat-eye frames. She set her tote down and took out the papers one by one. The screenshot of my bank's PDF, the printed check image with its pale watermark, the email from a customer care Sarah promising to resolve the clerical error, and wrapped in a plastic sleeve, a notarized letter. "Hannah stamped it," she said, tapping the embossed seal. "States plainly that your signature on December 12th was forged. We cite the mismatched G and the pressure inconsistency. We laid everything in the box as if dressing a newborn. Bottom, the photocopy of the forged check, the numbers fat and smug, $12,000, Harris Estate Advance. Above it, the bank email, December 13th, 7:46 a.m., subject line resolution in progress. I'd replied once, then twice, then stopped when Sarah started copying Nora Harris for transparency. On top, the notarized letter, dated December 21st, 2024, signed by Evelyn as a witness because I asked her to stand beside me inside the page. "Why copy Nora?" Evelyn asked, snapping on her readers. "You didn't authorize that." "She authorized herself," I said. "That's her hobby." We added 2 more anchors, my late husband's gold ring in its velvet pouch, a witness to the years, and the old Macon savings receipt from 1995 with Ruth's fake J. The past and the present pressed together so tightly I could hear them breathe. At noon, I drove to the Broughton Street branch where the withdrawal had been processed. The teller's nameplate read, Amber. She looked 19 and earnest. "Policy says I can't discuss another customer," she said, eyes flicking to the manager. "I'm the customer," I said. "The signature is not mine." Amber swallowed. "We have a signature on file." "On file," I repeated, letting the words lie where she left them. "Do you store the stills from the lobby camera?" Her face flickered. 1 second of human before company. "We retain video for 30 days. Evelyn squeezed my elbow. 30 days reached back to December 12th, like a rope. I pictured Nora's hand sliding a check beneath plexiglass, head tilted to find her best angle in the reflection. I pictured the exact way she writes an N, flourish first, then narrow tail, as if she's signing a greeting card, not a crime. Back home, I tucked the box under the tree and tried the dining room lock. The brass turned smooth, the deadbolt seated. I hung the key back on the angel hook, a halo over a sword. The house smelled like cloves and humidity. The clock above the stove ticked. Every sound felt like a rehearsal. At 5:15 p.m., Nora texted a group thread labeled Perfect Eve Team. Reminder, all jewelry in the ring dish before dinner. Let's sparkle clean. 14 thumbs up lit the screen, including James's. I stood at the window until my reflection steadied. Until midnight, when the box opens. The bank stamp on the check image read, DC 12 918 AM, $12,000, Broughton St. E, and beneath my forged name, in tiny cashier's print, the depositor line said, Nora Harris. December 22nd wore a wet wool sky. Nora's stories pinged all morning. 14 guests, perfect eve, Savannah magic. She filmed her manicured hand scattering rosemary over potatoes, the caption, Family is the brand. In one clip she panned across the dining table, china inherited from Ruth, each plate crowned with a place card. Mine read, Gloria, hostess emeritus, in elegant loops that weren't kind. At 11:06 a.m., the bank manager called back. "Ms. Harris," he said, careful as a surgeon, "we've escalated your case. The signature on the December 12th instrument is being reviewed by our loss prevention team. In the meantime, the $12,000 is temporarily credited back to your account pending verification." "Temporarily?" I asked. "Standard for clerical errors," he said, tripping on the very phrase that had chased me since 1995. "We'll need to confirm with the presenting party." "The presenting party," I repeated, watching a squirrel bury something under the dripping camellia. "Who presented it?" "Privacy restrictions," he said, apologizing like a script. "We'll be in touch." I hung up and opened my gradebook to a blank page. December 12th, 9:18 a.m., Broughton Street. Presenting party, withheld. Result, temporary credit. I underlined temporary until the paper thinned. In the kitchen, the faith box waited under the tree, heavy with paper and a ring that remembered my late husband's laughter. $12,000. Exactly the appraisal on that ring 2 summers ago, when James insisted on insuring it. "It's a legacy," he'd said, earnest, thumb rubbing the gold. "Someday, Mom, it'll help someone." Someone, indeed. When I stepped into the dining room to dust the sideboard, something Nora forgot when branding family, I found a printed schedule tucked beneath the ring dish. Shot list, Perfect Eve, 5:55 p.m. Candles, 6:10 p.m. Jewelry in dish, sparkle clean. 6:30 p.m. Toast, 7:00 p.m. Reveal, family gift tradition. Ring, TBD. I ran a finger under the acronym, TBD. To be decided by whom? Evelyn arrived with a grocery sack and a preacher's certainty. "I brought extra napkins," she said, eyes darting to the dish. "And batteries. And a truth you may not like." "Go on," I said. She took out an envelope. Inside was a printout of Nora's LLC registration, Harris House Events, filed November 7th, 2024. The slogan at the bottom read, "We turn families into content." "She's been scouting Perfect Eve as her big launch," Evelyn said. "Sponsors watch this kind of thing. Clean shine, clean story." I held the paper like a hot pan. No one builds a brand on contrition. Nora didn't need a mother-in-law. She needed a prop that wouldn't spill. At 4:23 p.m., James texted, "Mom, quick thing. Could you wear the red sweater we picked?" "Pops on camera," Nora says. I stared at the word pops and thought of fireworks, the kind that leave scorch marks. I looped the stove clock with a sticky note. Midnight. The house clicked and sighed, unaware it was becoming a courtroom. I looked again at the shot list, at reveal, family gift tradition, ring, TBD, and slid the ring pouch deeper into the faith box. I teach lessons, even at the table. Tonight's cost had a number and a name. The valuation note taped to the shot list, in Nora's looping script, read, "Ring, insured at $12,000. Hero moment." December 23rd, the day Savannah smells like cinnamon and low tide. I asked Nora to tea, my olive branch shaped like lemon cookies. She wore a cream sweater and a smile that could slice paper. We sat at her glass table, where reflections ask you to look down. "I don't want tension tomorrow," I said. "Let's agree on a few things." "Of course," she said. "Boundaries are healthy." She slid a slim white box toward me, tied with twine. A little pre-Eve gift. Inside lay a photo frame, matte gold, tasteful, empty. At the back, a card tucked where a picture should be, for the family we're building. A post-it clung to the corner in her looping script. "Please bring a printed 4x6 of you and Ruth. Continuity matters for the montage." "Ruth and I said, feeling the floor tilt, "didn't pose." "Then take something from the old albums," she said lightly. "We'll crop." I set the empty frame between us. "Why did the bank copy you on my case?" She sipped. "Transparency. James asked me to help. You get overwhelmed with digital." "I get thorough," I said. "Same thing at your age," she replied, checking her phone. "Anyway, they'll fix it. Clerical error. The narrative for tomorrow is family healing, not finances. I've worked too hard to let mess take over. People are tired of mess." I looked at the frame again. its gold rim promising a picture that hadn't happened. She wanted to curate even the past. "Nora," I said softly, "if I bring something in a box tomorrow, will you let it be?" "If it's on the shot list," she said, not missing a beat. "By the way, quick legal nothing. Could you sign a little acknowledgement tonight? Just a note saying you withdrew the $12,000 by mistake and the bank corrected it. Brands love clarity." She slid a single sheet toward me. At the bottom, a line waited for my name. The printed text used the same font as her invitations, domestic prettiness masking a trap. "It protects you," she said, tapping the signature line. "Trust me." I closed the pen she'd offered and set it down. "I don't sign my name to lies." She leaned back. "Then don't make a scene. James needs peace." There it was, the old script updated. Protect the son, frame the wife, call lies clarity. I picked up the empty frame, turned it over, and saw a price sticker she'd missed, $24.99. Even meaning had a barcode. Outside, the live oak shivered. Inside, my plan B stood up in my bones. If dawn belonged to Nora for light and footage, then midnight belonged to me. I texted Evelyn, "We might need eyes." She replied, "I know a boy at the bank who knows cameras. He sings in my choir. He's home for the holidays." At the door, Nora touched my arm. "Wear the ring tomorrow," she murmured. "It photographs as heritage." I smiled like a woman shopping for picture frames. "It's already under the tree. Until midnight, when the box opens. If you step into that church tomorrow, I'll—" December 24th woke gray as dishwater. I brewed coffee that tasted like resolve and checked my account. The $12,000 credit pending line had vanished, replaced by a cold note, "Hold applied, pending verification." My balance looked like a throat cleared to speak, and then deciding not to. I called the bank. A hold music carol jingled until a voice informed me the presenting party had provided clarifying documentation. "May I see that documentation?" I asked. "Due to privacy," the voice began. "Of the thief?" I said. Silence, then a disconnect disguised as a transfer. I stared at the faith box under the tree. Paper weighs less than money and more than shame. At 10:02 a.m., Nora's Perfect Eve team thread lit up. Schedule change, family gift reveal bumped to 6:45. Everyone arrive camera ready. A sparkle emoji, a bell. Underneath, James, "Mom, remember the sweater, and maybe keep it light tonight?" The words rubbed my ribs raw. Evelyn called, whispering like we were already in a church. "Our choir tenor, Caleb, works part-time at the Broughton branch," she said. "He thinks the lobby cam might show whoever handed the check through the glass. He's off today, but his manager is in. He can't share footage, but he can describe what he sees." "Describe is enough to live on," I said, writing Caleb, choir, 11 a.m. in my gradebook. Before we could move, the cousins arrived like birds, all chatter and perfume. One kissed the air near my cheek and murmured, "Saw Nora's teaser, so proud of you for the forgiveness journey." Forgiveness? I hadn't picked that word. The house filled with coats, umbrellas, and the hot plastic smell of blow-dried hair. Nora flitted, humming oversight. "Gloria," she said brightly, "you'll sit at the head of the table for the toast. We love a matriarch moment." "Is that before or after the ring dish?" I asked. "Before," she said, eyes quick. "We want the glassware to sparkle in the apology shot. Look." She showed me her shot list, now laminated. A new line had appeared, 6:40. Gloria's statement, bank error. I felt the floor tilt. I hadn't written that line, but my mouth was being cast. I found James in the garage, pretending to care about folding chairs. "Did you write that shot list?" I asked. He flushed the color of a bad decision. "Nora just wants order." "Mom, if you could just say something like, I got confused with the banking app. It would shut down the gossip." "The gossip Nora started?" I said. He flinched, then squared. "She didn't. People talk. She's protecting us." "From what?" I asked. "Truth?" "From mess," he said. "From the internet eating our lives." He looked young and tired. "I need this to go well." There it was. Love as ledger, son as debtor, mother as collateral. I walked out before he could see the water in my eyes. In the kitchen, I opened the empty gold frame and slid in the Macon receipt with Ruth's forged J. I set it on the counter. A portrait of a lineage, not a family. At 11:21 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was the bank manager, Brisk. "We've reviewed internal materials. The December 12th transaction appears valid. The hold will remain while we complete our process." I could hear office air whooshing like an indifferent tide. "Internal materials?" I asked. "Did they have a name?" "Ma'am," he said, "please enjoy your holiday." I hung up and felt the house tilt again into performance. I wasn't just losing money. I was losing the room. Nora walked by, smiled like a frost, and touched the faith box with a fingernail. "Cute," she said, "our little prop. I teach lessons, even at the table, but some students need the pop quiz." At 11:59 a.m., Caleb texted from a number Evelyn had sent. "Manager says policy, but I can look. Call me at 12:15, 2 minutes tops. Lobby cam is grainy, but there's a coat. If the coat is hers, we don't need names." At 12:15 p.m., I stood in my pantry among canned peaches and a tower of paper towels, phone warm against my cheek. Caleb's voice came through, low and earnest. "Miss Gloria, I'm looking at the December 12th 9:15 to 9:20 window. Lobby camera, angle on the teller line. The frame rate is not great." "I taught with chalk," I said. "I can read a ghost." He exhaled a laugh. "Okay." At 9:17, a woman approaches Amber's window. Long cream coat, belted, big collar, hair up. She hands something flat under the glass. "Cream," I said. "Not white?" "Cream," he repeated. "Like the sweater Nora posted this morning?" "Sorry, I follow her page. Everybody does." Paper rustled. "There's a reflection, phone camera in the glass. You can see her looking at herself when she signs the pad." I pressed my palm to the wall until paint dusted my skin. "Is there a name on the transaction overlay?" "Just instrument presented and the time," he said. "No names." "My son's wife," I said, feeling each word seat itself like a nail. "She filmed herself committing a crime." "I can't say that," he whispered, choir boy honest. "But I can say she wore a cream coat with gold buttons, and she looked at her reflection when she signed. And Amber's head tilts when she checks the screen. That's her tell when the signature doesn't match. I've seen it when old folks come in." "Old folks," I repeated, tasting the arc of a story. "Thank you, Caleb. Sing loud at Christmas." When I hung up, the pantry was too small for breath. I stepped into the kitchen and met Evelyn's eyes across the counter, where she was folding napkins into something swan-like. "Well?" she asked without moving her lips. "Cream coat," I said. "Gold buttons. Reflection. A tell." She nodded slowly, a conductor hearing the orchestra find the key. "We're at N3, she said. "Evidence level. Image." I carried the faith box to the dining room and placed it at the foot of the tree, then straightened the angel hook where the key hung like a hush. I ran my thumb over the brass lock on the dining room door. It caught and then obeyed. I checked the hinges, the chairs, the way sound carried from the kitchen to the table. Every classroom is a stage if you know where to stand. At 3:02 p.m., Nora floated in wearing that cream coat. Belted. Big collar. Gold buttons bright as coins. My stomach fell through my shoes and kept going. "Weather," she trilled, smoothing the belt as if the coat had appeared by accident. "Savannah is so fickle." "It keeps receipts," I said. She touched my shoulder. "Remember your statement at 6:40, she said. "Have you been through something similar? Tell us your story in the comments below. We read every comment. It's important for us to know we're not alone." Squeezing. Gentle for the cameras, hard for me. Short and sweet. People tune out sermons. "I teach lessons," I said, even at the table. She turned to direct a cousin moving candles an inch to the left. "Aunt Lila, love, the ring dish goes near the cards," she sang, then gave me a conspiratorial wink that left a streak of ice down my back. The room held 14 plates, 14 forks, and one truth wrapped in pine. At 4:10 p.m., Evelyn slipped me a small flash drive. "Caleb sent a still to my church email," she whispered. "It's grainy, but you can see the cream. He shouldn't have, but he did." I held it like a relic. This is enough to ask the right questions in the wrong room, I said. We make it the right room, she said, eyes on the locked door. You hold the key. I tucked the drive into the faith box between the notarized letter and my husband's ring, then slid the lid shut. The word faith looked brave and a little uneven, like me. At 5:33 p.m., the house chimed with arrivals and December damp. Laughter skittered, glasses peeled. Nora's camera blinked its red dot, greedy and blind, until midnight, when the box opens. If the camera sees everything, why did Nora forget the lock? By 5:40 p.m., the house thrummed like a hive. I slipped into my bedroom and shut the door long enough to hear my own breath. The mirror held a woman in a red sweater Nora picked for Pop, but the eyes were mine, steady, unstyled. I set the faith box on the quilt, opened it, and laid the evidence out like a lesson plan. Forged check image, $12,000, DEC 12, 9:18 a.m., Broughton Saint. Bank email, resolution in progress, notarized letter, embossed seal-catching lamplight, and Caleb's small, traitorous still, cream coat at the teller glass, a ghosted circle of a phone lifted to her own reflection. Ready? Evelyn asked from the doorway, one heel still in the hall, the other towing my rug like we were crossing a church threshold. She closed us in and exhaled. Level N3, plus the letter. It's enough to move a room. Not yet, I said, sliding the ring pouch aside to reveal the flash drive. First, I move my son. I texted James. Upstairs. 2 minutes. No cameras. My thumb shook once and then remembered it was 66, not 16. When he came in, he looked startled, as if he'd stumbled on a service already underway. Mom, the toast, he began. Sit, I said, and he did. I placed the still in his hands. This is from your bank's lobby camera at 9:18 on December 12th. That's the same coat she's wearing today. That's the teller I spoke to, Amber. And that circle? That's a phone lens catching itself like a confession. He squinted, defenses flaring. It could be anyone in a coat. It could, I said, sliding the letter on top. Except we have a notarized statement, dated December 24th, from a licensed notary who attests my signature on the withdrawal was forged. We have a bank email that copied your wife on my private case without my consent. And we have a check image with my name drawn like a child tracing a parent's hand. He stared at the embossed seal, the way men stare at tides and pretend they can bargain. Nora said you tapped the wrong thing on your app. I tapped my notes. I read my dates. I signed my G like a ladle, I said. And when his mouth trembled, I softened. James, I loved a boy who swore he'd never let his mother choose his wife for him. Don't make the wife choose the story for you. Evelyn stepped forward. I'll testify, she said gently. And Caleb, off the record, will testify to what he saw. This is not a scene, James. This is a correction. He lifted the still again, then the letter, then the ring pouch like it might explain anything. If this goes public, he whispered, she'll be ruined. She ruined herself, I said. I'm just turning on the light. Downstairs, Nora's laugh floated up, brittle bells wrapped in velvet. The schedule chimed, 6:30, toast time. I replaced the papers, closed the lid, and slid the brass key from my pocket. At midnight, I said, feeling the weight of the word like a door. You can walk out with truth, or you can stay with a lie, but the door will not open to both. He stood, breaking at the edges. Mom, please. I teach lessons, even at the table. Then learn, I said, and passed him the still one more time so his fingerprints would know it too. From the hallway, footsteps. Nora's voice, sweet as arsenic. James, ready for your apology shot? The knob turned. How many prints does it take to make a truth stick? I descended with the box pressed to my ribs, a quiet metronome. The dining room shone like a magazine spread, white tapers trembling, plates winking with sacrament. I laid the faith box beneath the Fraser fir where shadows pooled, then drifted room to room like a substitute teacher before the bell. First, the lock. I palmed the brass key and checked the mechanism. Turn, seat, release, smooth as a prayer. I left the key on the angel hook beside the pantry, halo bright, where any honest eye could see it and any guilty one would pretend not to. Second, the seating. I swapped 2 place cards while carrying a stack of napkins, as innocent as breath. Set Aunt Lila across from Nora's favored cousin, the one who repeats without understanding. Set Evelyn to my right with a straight line of sight to the box, and set James at my left, between me and the door. I slid a pencil under his plate, the old kind, number 2, the kind that makes marks that don't forget. In case you need to write anything true, I murmured, when no one watched. Third, the light. I lowered the dining room dimmer 2 notches, enough for candlesticks to hold faces in relief, enough for screens to struggle. Phones love brightness. Truth blooms in the softer dark. Fourth, the sound. I pulled the Bluetooth speaker's plug 1 inch loose, leaving it ready to hiss at the first toast. A glitch is a pause. A pause is an opening for a lesson to step through. "Gloria," Nora called, that cream coat now draped over the chair she wanted to claim in the footage. "We're at 6:30. Toast, then dish." The ring dish gleamed on the sideboard, white and gold, a hungry little mouth. I set the empty frame beside it, Ruth's old Macon receipt smiling through glass like a warning label. I carried in the cider, steady as ritual. "Before we lift," I said, "a small housekeeping." Nora's neck stiffened 1 degree. The camera red dot blinked awake. I smiled at the lens like it was a child who'd just learned manners. "Phones in a basket for the first course. Let's taste before we post." I held out a woven tray Aunt Lila had brought peaches in back in Yo 2. Grumbles, laughter, a chorus of compliance. Even Nora, theatrical, set hers down last. Screen face up, black glass catching candle flames, and my reflection. 6:40 blinked on the stove clock. She rose with her laminated list. "Family," she sang, "we honor legacy tonight. My beautiful mother-in-law has something to say about a bank hiccup." The Bluetooth popped and gasped, my inch of silence blooming. I lifted a palm. "I do," I said softly. "I'd like to begin by thanking our hostess for her precision. It's rare to see such care taken with details. Compliments disarm." I watched her shoulders drop a hair, watched the cousins lean in. "And," I continued, "I'd like to start a new tradition, a midnight gratitude. We'll lock this door." My fingers found the key without looking. Not to trap anyone, but to keep the truth from evaporating before it lands. A ripple. She laughed too quickly. "Gloria's teasing," she said to the room. "We're all free." "Of course," I said, turning the key with a soft, undeniable click. Right after midnight. The room inhaled. 14 guests reconsidered their forks. I set the key back on the angel hook in plain view. "Now we eat, we talk, we remember." Evelyn lifted her glass, steady as a bell. "To the kind of faith you can hold." We sat. The first course arrived. Silver sounded like small, polite crimes. Nora's smile strained. Behind her chair, the cream coat's belt dangled like a tail. If the door is closed and the camera's blinking, which truth will run first? By 10:37 p.m., the candles were nubs and the roast wore a tired shine. Laughter thinned to tinsel. I carried the empty gravy boat to the kitchen, and Nora followed, coatless now, sleeves pushed up, diamonds chiming soft on her wrist. We stood between the dishwasher's warm breath and the refrigerator's hum, the kind of sterile light where lies show their pores. "You're enjoying this," she said lightly, rinsing a spoon that was already clean. "Your little lock game." "It's not a game," I said, setting the gravy boat down with purpose. "It's a pause. You keep skipping to the part where you're forgiven." Her smile was a practiced yoga pose. "Forgiven for what? A clerical error your bank admitted?" I wiped the counter in a slow arc. Amber tilts her head when a signature doesn't match. She blinked. "Who is Amber?" "The teller at Broughton," I said. "December 12th, 9:18 a.m. Long cream coat, belted, gold buttons." A woman lifted her phone just enough to find herself in the glass while she signed my name like she was late for an appointment. Nora chuckled, low and surgical. "Savannah is full of women with coats and errands." "And looping ends," I said, sliding a folded paper from my sweater pocket. "And they like putting themselves on email chains that don't belong to them. Why were you copied on my bank case, Nora?" "Transparency," she said, drawing the same spoon to a shine that made the light flinch. James asked me to help. You get overwhelmed. I get thorough, I said. The letter is notarized. The check image shows my name drawn like a child tracing a parent's hand. And the bank's own timestamp can count. $12,000 is a neat number. It matches the ring you keep trying to call content. She didn't look at the ring dish on the sideboard, that hungry little mouth. She looked at me, finally, without the performance. The room dimmed around us until only her pupils and the edge of her teeth seemed lit. If you say any of that out there, she murmured, I'll make you the story, the bitter matriarch, the one who ruined Christmas for clicks. At my age, I said, I don't shout. I document. Her voice thinned. You don't have proof people believe. Belief is a luxury, I said. Proof is a weight. I let the words sit between us with the clink of a plate. You wrote hero moment beside my ring on the shot list. Is theft your idea of a hero's journey? It's my idea of a narrative, she said, and then, quieter, James needs peace. Peace is not a hostage you trade for views, I said. It's a receipt you keep. She leaned in so close I could count the mascara in her lashes. Open that box and you'll lose him. Her breath was peppermint and threat. He's exhausted. He'll choose quiet. With me. Maybe, I said. Or maybe he's tired of pretending the camera is God. She straightened, pasted the smile back on. Come on, dessert. Your big midnight gratitude. She moved to brush past me. I let her, then said, not loud, not soft. If it wasn't you at Broughton, why does your end curl like Ruth's? Her shoulder paused barely. Then the spoon slipped from her fingers and sang against the sink. Why would Ruth's 1995 curl show up on a 2024 crime? At 11:56 p.m., the room held its breath with the candles. 14 plates wore crumbs like snow. The Bluetooth sat unplugged an inch. The phones lay in Aunt Lila's peach basket like obedient pets. I stood, palms on the back of my chair, the brass key winking from the angel hook like a witness who doesn't blink. Family, I said, and the word felt honest at last. At my age, I don't shout. I document. Nora rose a beat too quickly, laminated list trembling. We're doing gratitude, she sang. One word each. I'll start. Legacy. She looked at the camera that wasn't recording. Her smile faltered when nothing red blinked back. Before words, I said, stepping to the tree. I lifted the faith box and set it at the head of the table, the carved letters catching waxlight. A lesson, not loud, just dated, named, and numbered. Evelyn's chin lifted. James's hand closed around the pencil under his plate, like his fingers had been waiting 20 years to hold something simple and true. I opened the lid. First, the bank email. December 13th, 7:46 a.m. Subject resolution in progress. CC, Nora Harris. My private case became content, I said, laying it flat. A cousin coughed. Second, the check image. DEC 12, 9:18 a.m. $12,000. Harris Estate Advance. Signature on file. My name is not a costume, I said. I traced the shallow G with a teacher's patience. I signed this letter like a ladle. This G is a smile someone forgot to mean. Third, the notarized letter. Evelyn spoke without standing. I served as witness. The notary affixed an embossed seal confirming the signature on December 12th is not Ms. Harris's. That's not drama. It's procedure. Fourth, the still, grainy, yes, but honest about time. A cream coat at the teller glass, a lifted phone kissing its own reflection. The room leaned 1 degree closer as if gravity had turned. I set it upright against the ring dish so the gold rim looked like a frame around a small sin. Nora laughed, a sound like ice poured over stone. You're humiliating yourself. That could be anyone. Deep fakes exist. Old people see ghosts in glass. I didn't look at her. I looked at my son. James, I said, who does that look like? His mouth opened and closed. He stared at the coat, then at the real one draped on the chair, belt hanging like a tail. He touched the pencil to the table, made a dot, a small black star. It looks like the coat she bought on December 9th, he said, voice scraping. At the boutique off Whitaker. The buttons. There are 4. Nora's eyes flashed. James. And the phone, I added gently, turning to the basket. There's a reason I asked for no screens. They are mirrors, but they are also diaries. I lifted the peach basket. Nora's phone lay face up, black glass drinking candlelight. I held it out to her like a communion she'd have to choose. Unlock it. I have a montage to play for our midnight gratitude. She didn't move. The room stilled. The stove clock clicked 11:58. Refusing your own brand's ritual? Aunt Lila said, tipsy honesty sliding past her filter. Now that's content. Nora smiled with her teeth. I won't be bullied into handing over my privacy. Then let me hold it, James said, soft, the way a man speaks to a skittish animal. I know your code. We share a life. Something flickered across her face. Fury, fear, both. You think you know me, she said, but you've never had to build anything from nothing. I watched my mother build from nothing, he said, with receipts. The clock blinked 11:59. I set my husband's ring next to the still, the gold a small sun. Midnight, I said, and then we opened the door. With truth or with noise? Your choice, Nora. Her hand shot to the basket. Would she unlock it, or throw the phone at the floor and shatter our last clean proof? Midnight struck like a clean grade in a crooked stack. Nora's fingers hovered, then snatched the phone from the basket. For a blink I thought she'd smash it, but performance is a jealous god. She couldn't mar her own prop. Her face lit blue. Thumb. Pause. Face ID caught the curve of her cheekbone and obeyed without shame. Gallery, I said. Calm tastes like peppermint in December. She hesitated. James extended his hand. I'll do it, he said softly. And she let him, a surrender that looked like trust to the untrained. He scrolled. The room leaned. A cousin muttered a prayer. Aunt Lila stopped mid-gossip, like a record lifted. There, Evelyn breathed. December 12th. A video opened. Grainy lobby lights, the cream coat, the gold buttons. The phone turned briefly, capturing Nora's own eye in the teller glass, black and bright as a marble. She pushed a paper through the slot. Stylus poised, then dipped into the shallow smile of a stolen G. Amber's head tilted. Caleb's tell. A sign printed on the plexi flickered. Broughton St. Branch, cameras in use. Nora lunged. James held firm. Don't, he said, voice shaking but shaped. He turned the screen outward so the table could see. No need to project. The silence was a theater. 14 breaths hitched on the same beat. Somewhere outside, a horn confessed midnight to the city. In here, the truth arrived on a 4-inch screen and a notarized seal. Someone framed me, Nora said finally, each word individually iced. Deepfake, AI, you know how it is. It's your voice humming, James whispered, thumb brushing the playback bar. She had, without meaning to, captured herself humming the jingle she uses in her reels. 3-note signature, impossible to counterfeit if you've heard it enough to hate it. He pressed pause on that hum like a judge's gavel. I slid the notarized letter beside the phone. N4, Evelyn said quietly, like naming a hymn. Master proof, confession by artifact, plus notarial attestation. Nora tried the only door left. Fine, she said, eyes bright and flat. But it wasn't about theft. It was about protecting family assets from chaos. You were going to waste the ring, Gloria. Sell it for a boiler. I was elevating. I put my husband's ring in my palm. It felt like a small moon I'd borrowed for years. You forged my name to launch your company, I said. You turned legacy into leverage. You told the bank my confusion was consent. James looked at the coat draped behind her, then at the boy he used to be in my hallway mirror. He set the phone down like a weapon he wouldn't carry anymore. Nora, he said, we're calling the bank now. You'll send them this video. You'll sign an affidavit. You'll email every person copied on Mom's case and say the words I and did. Or what? She asked, a laugh with a broken leg. Or I call Officer Daniels, Evelyn said, already dialing. Savannah PD. He ushers at our choir's midnight service. He knows the difference between a clerical error and a crime. Nora looked around for her usual exits, likes, edits, a softer filter. The door was locked. The room was awake. Her brand had brittle bones. Open it, she said finally. staring at the door, not at me. "Open the door." "We open after you write," I said, sliding the number 2 pencil toward her place. "Dates, amounts, name." Spelled right. She stared at the pencil like it was a snake. Would she put her own name on paper now that the camera had done it for her? She sat. The pencil hovered, jittered, then obeyed. "I, Nora Harris," she wrote, the N looping too wide even when the truth asked for smaller shapes. "Withdrawn $12,000 on December 12, 2024, Broughton Street branch, using a forged signature appearing to be Gloria Harris. I authorize the bank to reverse and cooperate with any investigation." It wasn't poetic. It was oxygen. I slid the bank email under her wrist so she'd see her own name in the CC line while she signed. She swallowed. "You're ruining us," she whispered, tiny as a pin. Sponsors were lined up. Harris House Events launches on New Year's Eve. "You ruined you," I said, gentle as I know how. "Tonight I'm just not amortizing it." Evelyn hit speaker. "Officer Daniels," she said. His voice arrived warm and official. We gave him the 30-second truth. Date, time, branch, amount, artifact. He asked for the video. James airdropped it to Evelyn's phone. She sent it to the PD address he spelled out twice. "Stay put," he said. 10 minutes. 10 minutes in a family room is a long season. The cousins arranged their faces into learning. Aunt Lila patted the peach basket like it contained absolution. Someone asked if this would be on the internet. "Only if she wants it," I said. And half the room understood which woman I meant. The bank manager, perhaps summoned by conscience or the ticking of Savannah's small-town clock, called me at 12:07 a.m. "Ms. Harris," he said, voice clipped into duty, "we received a law enforcement request. Please accept my apology for any earlier mischaracterization. The hold will be lifted immediately. The funds will be restored in full pending formal charges." "Use numbers," I said. $12,000, today." He repeated them. I wrote the time, 12:08 a.m., and the amount in my gradebook. I underlined immediately once. I believed it twice. Nora stared at the cream coat like it was a skin she could shed. "James," she said, pivoting to her last safe script, "if you love me, you'll keep this in the family. We can fix it quietly. Your mother doesn't need a scandal." James folded the confession and slipped it into the faith box as if he were laying a body down. "I love the version of you who didn't lie," he said. "I'll wait to see her again, but tonight we stop pretending for cameras." Officer Daniels rang at 12:14. He was kind to the room and stern to the fact. He watched the video, read the letter, took the confession, and asked 3 questions that fit in his notebook like teeth. "You are free to go home tonight," he told Nora evenly. "But expect a call. The bank will press charges. You should obtain counsel." Nora's mouth trembled around a performance that would not cue. She glanced at the empty frame on the sideboard, Ruth's old receipt grinning behind its glass. A lineage of borrowed signatures. "You did this," she whispered to me. Not an accusation so much as a map she finally saw. "You waited all these years." "I learned to choose myself without apology," I said, "and to open boxes when they're full." I turned to the door. The brass key fit like forgiveness that doesn't forget. I opened it. The December air entered, cold and cleaner than the room. James picked up the cream coat and held it out to her like a decision. She took it without speaking. Sponsors don't pay for courtrooms. Brands don't feed on affidavits. The house felt suddenly unbranded, plain and good. Before she crossed the threshold, she looked back at the ring dish. "Keep your heirlooms," she said. "They're heavy." "They keep us from blowing away," I answered. She stepped into the hall, heels small thunder. Would weight save us, or drown what was left of us? By 1:03 a.m., the dishwasher hummed like a lullaby, and most of the cousins had drifted into the wet Savannah dark, whispering lessons into their phones. Evelyn stacked plates with the tidiness of a prayer and then hugged me so close I felt her laugh against my collarbone. "Receipt kept," she said, and left me with the room and my name, both intact. James lingered by the tree, eyes rimmed with a boy's old salt. "Mom," he said, voice smaller than his shoulders. I'm sorry. For the days I let someone else write you into a corner. I'm not a corner, I said, touching his cheek. I'm a table. Sit when you remember how to eat. He exhaled a wounded thank you. I'll call a lawyer in the morning, he said. I'll tell the bank to contact me directly. You'll sleep, I said, and you'll not explain your mother to anyone for 3 days. He smiled because he knows me. Justice with homework. I carried the faith box to the mantel and lifted the lid one last time tonight. Inside lay the affidavits of a war I hadn't started and refused to keep losing. The notarized letter, the bank email, the still, the confession in pencil, my husband's ring radiating like a kept promise. I added one more paper, torn from my gradebook, where I'd written the 5 sentences that mattered. DC 12, 9:18 a.m., $12,000. Broughton, forged, returned. I closed the lid. The burned word on top looked truer now. I lit a single beeswax taper and set it in Ruth's old candlestick. The flame tugged our shadows into an honest shape. Across the room, the empty gold frame still held the Macon receipt, 1995, smiling like a ghost, finally named. I pulled the back open, removed the receipt, and slid in a fresh photograph. Me at the head of the table tonight, eyes steady, mouth quiet, hands on wood. Evelyn had snapped it at 12:20 without a filter, because friends don't correct your face. The ring dish gleamed. I lifted my husband's ring, kissed its inside curve where his skin once warmed the gold, and then I did not put it on. I tucked it into a velvet pouch labeled with a date and a sentence, not collateral, legacy. I locked it in the small fireproof safe under my bed next to passports and the deed. By 1:27 a.m., only the fridge and I were awake. I opened the window. The night gave me a breath that hadn't been inside anyone else yet. At my age, I said to the nothing that had ears, I don't shout. I document. Out in the oak, a mockingbird tried on someone else's song and failed. Good. I set the faith box back under the tree, not as bait now, but as archive. Tomorrow I'll take it to the bank and then to Officer Daniels. Next week I'll take my gradebook to a class at the community center and teach grandmothers how to read a G. I blew out the candle, the room went simple, and the quiet stayed. Because once you've locked a door with truth, you never walk through the same way again. If this story gave you strength, help us by sharing, liking, and hitting the notification bell. We'd love to hear in the comments which part of the story you liked most. See you tomorrow.